The rain-soaked streets of San Francisco glistened under neon lights. But Ezra's heart pounded louder than the storm. He stood frozen outside a dimly lit cafe, staring through the window at a stranger whose face felt like a melody he'd forgotten. That stranger, with golden curls and a smile that could unravel the darkest night, was about to change his life forever. Ezra, 24, had always been a wanderer, chasing dreams in a city that promised freedom but often delivered loneliness. Raised by a single father in a small Oregon town, he'd fled to San Francisco after high school, seeking a place where he could be unapologetically himself, a gay man with a heart too big for his own good. The city had embraced him, but it also taught him that love was a rare, fleeting thing, like catching fog in your hands. Tonight, though, felt different. The stranger inside the cafe, sketching furiously in a worn notebook, seemed to glow with a warmth Ezra couldn't ignore. He pushed open the door, the bell jingling softly, and stepped into a world where everything was about to shift. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee and rain-damp coats. Ezra slid into a booth across from the stranger, who looked up, startled, his green eyes catching the light like sea glass. "You're staring," the stranger said, his voice soft but teasing, a faint southern drawl curling around the words. "I'm sorry," Ezra stammered, cheeks burning. You look like someone I've always wanted to meet." The stranger laughed, a sound like wind chimes, and extended a hand. "I'm Luca. And you're bold. I'll give you that." Ezra shook his hand, feeling a spark that wasn't just static. "Ezra. And I'm not usually this forward. I swear." They talked for hours, the world outside fading as the rain drummed on. Luca was 23, an artist who'd moved to San Francisco from Georgia, chasing a dream of painting murals that told stories no one else dared to tell. He spoke of growing up in foster care, of feeling like he belonged nowhere. Yet his eyes held a quiet strength that made Ezra's chest ache. "You ever feel like you're searching for something you can't name?" Luca asked, tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "Every day," Ezra admitted. "Like there's a piece of me missing, and I'm just wandering until I find it." Luca's gaze softened, and for a moment, they were the only two people in the universe. The conversation flowed like a river music. Art. The way the city felt alive at night. Ezra learned Luca loved old jazz records and hated mornings. Luca discovered Ezra's secret talent for writing poetry he never showed anyone. By the time the cafe closed, they were sharing shy smiles and phone numbers, promising to meet again. As Ezra walked home through the misty streets, his heart felt full for the first time in years. Luca was a stranger. Yes, but he didn't feel like one. There was something familiar in his laugh, in the way his eyes crinkled, like a memory Ezra couldn't place. The next week was a blur of texts and late-night calls. Luca invited Ezra to an art gallery opening where one of his paintings, a vivid swirl of blues and golds depicting two hands reaching across a starry sky, hung proudly. Ezra stood before it, breathless, feeling like Luca had painted his own unspoken dreams. "You get it," Luca said, standing close enough that their shoulders brushed. "Most people just see colors. You see the story." Ezra turned, their faces inches apart. "I see you," he whispered. The kiss that followed was soft, tentative, like stepping onto a frozen lake, testing if it would hold. It did. The gallery faded, The crowd vanished, and all that remained was the warmth of Luca's lips, the quiet promise of something real. But love, Ezra would soon learn, was only the beginning of their story. Days turned into weeks, and their connection deepened. They explored San Francisco together, Chinatown's bustling markets, the foggy cliffs of Land's End, hole-in-the-wall diners where they shared fries and secrets. Luca opened up about his foster care days, the families who never quite felt like home, the ache of not knowing where he came from. Ezra shared his own story, a father who loved him but never understood him, a mother who'd left when he was too young to remember her face. I used to imagine she was out there, living some big, beautiful life, Ezra said one night, lying on a blanket in Golden Gate Park, Luca's head resting on his chest. But now I don't know. I stopped looking for her. Luca traced circles on Ezra's hand. I get it. I stopped looking for my parents too. Sometimes it's easier to let go. Their bond grew stronger. But so did the nagging feeling in Ezra's gut sense that something was too familiar about Luca. Too perfect. Like a puzzle piece slotting into place before he'd even seen the whole picture. He pushed it aside, blaming it on the intensity of new love. One evening, Luca invited Ezra to his tiny apartment, a cluttered space filled with canvases and paint-splattered furniture. They cooked dinner together, laughing as tomato sauce splattered on the counter. And later, as they sat on the couch, Luca pulled out an old photo album. Found this in storage last year, Luca said, flipping through faded pictures. It's all I have from before foster care. Not much, but it's something. Ezra leaned closer, curious. The photos showed a young Luca, maybe 4 or 5, with those same green eyes and curls. But one image stopped Ezra cold, a woman with dark hair and a sad smile, holding a baby. Something about her face, her sharp cheekbones, the curve of her jaw felt like looking in a mirror. Who's that? Ezra asked, his voice tight. Luca's expression darkened. My mom. I think. I don't know much about her. She gave me up when I was little. Ezra's heart thudded. Do you know her name? Luca shook his head. No. Just that she was young. Maybe scared. The social worker said she loved me, but couldn't keep me. Ezra stared at the photo, a chill creeping up his spine. His own mother had left when he was a baby. He'd never seen her face, never known her name. But this woman, she looked like him. I need to show you something, Ezra said, his voice barely above a whisper. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to a scanned letter his father had given him years ago, a note from his mother, apologizing for leaving. It was signed only with an initial, M. Luca frowned, taking the phone. What's this about? Ezra's hands shook. I think we need to find out who she was. The room felt too small, the air too thick. Luca's eyes met Ezra's, and for the first time, there was fear in them. Not of each other, but of a truth neither was ready to face. The weight of the photo and the letter hung between them like a storm cloud. Ezra sat on Luca's couch, his mind racing, while Luca paced the small apartment, clutching the phone with the scanned note. The possibility that their mothers might be the same woman was too wild, too cruel to consider. Yet it gnawed at them both. We're jumping to conclusions, Luca said, his voice strained. It's just a resemblance. It doesn't mean anything. Ezra nodded. But his gut twisted. Maybe. But we need to know. They agreed to dig deeper, though neither wanted to admit what they were searching for. Ezra called his father, Tom. The next morning, his hands sweaty as he gripped the phone. Tom was a quiet man, a mechanic who'd raised Ezra with love but few words. When Ezra asked about his mother, the line went silent. Ezra, why now? Tom finally asked. You never wanted to know before. I found something. A picture. She looks like someone I know. Tom sighed, heavy and tired. Her name was Marianne. She was troubled. Left when you were 6 months old. I don't know where she went. Marianne. Ezra repeated, the name sharp on his tongue. Did she ever have another kid? Another long pause. Not that I know of. But she was gone a lot before you were born. I didn't ask questions. Ezra's heart sank. He thanked his father and hung up, relaying the conversation to Luca, who sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching absent-mindedly. My foster records might have something, Luca said, though his voice wavered. But they're sealed. It's not easy to get them. Ezra reached for his hand. We'll figure it out. Together. Their search became a quiet obsession. They spent days scouring public records, adoption forums, and social media for any trace of a Marianne who might have been in Georgia or Oregon around the time they were born. Luca's foster care agency was a dead-end bureaucratic walls too high to climb without a court order. But Ezra found a private investigator online, a woman named Carla who specialized in family reunions. They met Carla in a diner near the Mission District, her no-nonsense demeanor cutting through their nervous energy. You're looking for a woman named Marianne, possibly connected to both of you, she said, scribbling notes. Any other details? Last name? Age? Ezra hesitated. She'd be in her late 40s now. Maybe. Dark hair. Based on the photo. And she might have been in trouble. Back then. Carla raised an eyebrow. Trouble covers a lot of ground. I'll need more to work with. But I can start digging. It'll take time. As they left the diner, Luca grabbed Ezra's arm, his eyes searching. What if we're wrong? What if this ruins us? Ezra's chest tightened. He wanted to promise it wouldn't. But the fear in Luca's voice mirrored his own. We'll face it. Whatever it is. I'm not letting you go. Their romance, once light and effortless, now carried a shadow. They still held hands, still kissed under streetlights. But every touch felt fragile, like it could shatter under the weight of what they might find. Yet they clung to each other, unwilling to let the unknown tear them apart. Weeks passed, and Carla's updates were sparsy. Marianne in Portland, who didn't match. Another in Atlanta who died years ago. Ezra and Luca tried to keep their lives normal, painting murals and writing poetry. But the question of their past loomed larger every day. One night, at a jazz club in North Beach, Luca leaned close, his breath warm against Ezra's ear. If we find her, and it's true, what happens to us? Ezra's throat tightened. He wanted to say they'd be fine, that love could survive anything. But the word stuck. Instead, he kissed Luca fiercely, pouring every unspoken fear into it, hoping it would be enough. The breakthrough came on a chilly October morning. Carla called. Her voice clipped. Found something. Meet me at my office. They arrived, hearts pounding, to find Carla holding a thin folder. Marianne Voss, she said, sliding it across the desk. Born 1975. Oregon. Gave up a child for adoption in Georgia in 2002. Another in Oregon in 2001. Records are spotty, but the timelines fit. Ezra's hands shook as he opened the folder. A grainy photo of a young Marianne stared back. Her face unmistakable, the same cheekbones. The same sad smile from Luca's album. Luca's voice was barely a whisper. That's her. Carla leaned forward. There's more. Marianne's alive. She's in San Francisco. The room spun. Ezra gripped Luca's hand, their worlds colliding in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. Marianne was here, in their city, holding answers they both craved and dreaded. We have to find her, Ezra said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his heart. Luca nodded, but his eyes were distant, haunted. What if she doesn't want to be found? They left Carla's office in silence, the folder tucked under Ezra's arm like a ticking bomb. The city felt different now, every street corner a potential clue. Every stranger a ghost from their past. Their love, once a sanctuary, was now a battlefield. And the truth about Marianne would either save them or destroy them. The folder burned a hole in Ezra's backpack as he and Luca walked through the Tenderloin. The city's grit and noise a stark contrast to the storm inside them. Carla had given them an address, a halfway house in the Mission District where Marianne Voss was last known to live. The idea of confronting her felt surreal, like stepping into a dream that could turn into a nightmare. They stood outside the weathered building, its paint peeling like old skin. Luca's hand trembled in Ezra's, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet dread. What do we even say? He asked, staring at the door. Ezra squeezed his hand. We just ask for the truth. We deserve that much. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. A tired receptionist pointed them to a community room where residents gathered. Marianne was there, sitting alone by a window, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face etched with lines that told a story of hard years. She looked up as they approached, her eyes narrowing, then widening with something like recognition. Are you Marianne Voss? Ezra asked, his voice steady despite the hammering in his chest. She nodded slowly, her gaze flicking between them. Who are you? I'm Ezra. This is Luca. We think you might be our mother. The words landed like a thunderclap. Marianne's face paled, her hands gripping the edge of the table. That's not possible, she whispered, but her voice cracked, betraying her. Luca pulled out the photo from his album, sliding it across the table. Is this you? Marianne stared at it, her fingers trembling as she touched the faded image. Where did you get this? It was with my foster care stuff, Luca said softly. I was born in Georgia. 2002. Ezra was born in Oregon. 2001. We need to know if it's true. Marianne's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, until she finally whispered, I never thought I'd see you again. The story poured out in fragments, each word a shard of glass. Marianne had been 19 when she got pregnant with Ezra. living with his father in Oregon. She was scared, unstable, struggling with addiction. When Ezra was 6 months old, she left, unable to handle motherhood. A year later, in Georgia, she gave birth to Luca and gave him up at birth, hoping he'd have a better life. She'd never told anyone about either child, carrying the guilt like a second skin. "I didn't know how to be a mother," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought you'd both be better off without me." Ezra's throat burned. He wanted to hate her, to scream at her for abandoning them. But all he felt was a hollow ache. Luca sat frozen, his eyes fixed on the table, his hand still in Ezra's. "You're together?" Marian asked, noticing their clasped hands. Her voice held a mix of surprise and something softer hope. "Maybe." Ezra nodded, his jaw tight. "We didn't know. Not until we found you." Marianne's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this." The weight of her words settled over them, a truth too heavy to carry. Ezra and Luca left the halfway house in silence, the city blurring around them. They walked to the Embarcadero, the bay's cold wind biting their faces, and sat on a bench overlooking the water. "What do we do now?" Luca asked, his voice small. Ezra stared at the waves, his heart tearing in two. "I love you," he said, the words raw and desperate. "That hasn't changed." Luca's eyes glistened. "But we're brothers." "Ezra." The word hit like a punch. Ezra wanted to deny it, to pretend it wasn't true. But the evidence was undeniable. Marianne's story, the timelines, the photo. Their love, once a beacon, now felt like a cruel trick of fate. "We can't just ignore it," Lucas said, his voice breaking. "But I don't know how to let you go." Ezra pulled him close, their foreheads touching, tears mixing in the salty air. "We'll figure it out," he whispered, though he had no idea how. The days that followed were a haze of pain and confusion. They avoided Marianne, unsure if they could face her again. Their apartment visits stopped, replaced by long walks where they talked in circles, trying to untangle their feelings. Ezra clung to the memory of their first kiss, the way Luca's laugh had felt like home. Luca painted furiously, his canvases filled with jagged lines and dark colors, a reflection of the chaos inside him. One night, Ezra found Luca sitting on the floor of his apartment, surrounded by torn sketches. "I can't keep doing this," Luca said, his voice raw. "Every time I look at you, I see her. I see what we can't have." Ezra knelt beside him, his heart breaking. "We're more than this, Luca. We're more than her mistakes." Luca shook his head. "I need time. I need space." The words cut deeper than anything Marian had said. Ezra nodded, fighting tears, and left, the door closing behind him like a coffin lid. For weeks, they didn't speak. Ezra threw himself into his poetry, writing verses that bled with longing and loss. Luca's murals appeared around the city, haunting images of broken wings and shadowed faces, each one a silent cry. San Francisco, once their playground, now felt like a maze of memories they couldn't escape. Ezra's world felt gray without Luca. He wandered the city alone, avoiding the cafe where they'd met, the gallery where they'd kissed, His notebook filled with poems he'd never show anyone. Each line a plea for a love he couldn't keep. The truth about Marianne had shattered something fundamental, and he didn't know how to rebuild. Luca, meanwhile, was drowning in his own way. His art became his refuge. But every stroke of paint felt like a betrayal of Ezra, of himself, of the life they'd started to build. He avoided mirrors, unable to face the face that looked so much like Ezra's, a reminder of their shared blood. One evening, Ezra received a text from Carla. "Marianne wants to see you both. She's sober now, trying to make amends. Please consider it." Ezra stared at the message, torn. He didn't want to face Marianne, didn't want to reopen the wound, but a part of him wondered if she held the key to healing. He forwarded the text to Luca, adding, "I don't know if I can do this alone." Luca's reply came hours later. "Okay, let's do it." They met Marianne at a park in the Presidio, the air thick with the scent of eucalyptus. She looked different, cleaner, steadier, her eyes clearer than before. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I know I don't deserve this." Ezra crossed his arms, his heart a tangle of anger and curiosity. "Why now?" Marianne took a deep breath. "I've been running from my past for years. When you found me, it woke me up. I'm trying to be better. For you. If you'll let me." Luca's jaw tightened. "You left us. Both of us. How do we trust you now?" "I don't expect you to," Marianne said. "But I want to help you understand. You're brothers. Yes. But you're also you. Your bond, whatever it is, doesn't have to be defined by me." Her words hung in the air, a fragile bridge between their past and present. Ezra glanced at Luca, who looked away, his eyes glistening. They didn't speak much after that, but Marianne gave them a letter-long, handwritten account of her life, her mistakes, her regrets. "Read it when you're ready," she said. "Or don't. It's up to you." They left the park separately, the letter burning in Ezra's pocket. He wanted to tear it up, to erase Marianne from their lives. But he couldn't. Not yet. That night, Ezra sat in his apartment, the letter open before him. Marianne wrote of her youth, her fear, her addiction. She described giving up Luca as the hardest choice she'd ever made, and leaving Ezra as the one that broke her. She'd spent years running, hiding, until sobriety forced her to face the truth. Ezra cried as he read, not for Marianne, but for the boys they'd been, 2 kids abandoned, now bound by a love that felt impossible. He texted Luca, "Read the letter. We need to talk." They met at the cafe where it all began, the place now heavy with memories. Luca looked tired, his curls messy, his eyes red. "I read it," he said. "It doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," Ezra countered. "We're not just her sons. We're us. We can choose what this means." Luca's voice broke. "I love you, Ezra. But I can't. I can't be with you like that. Not knowing what we know." Ezra's heart shattered. But he nodded. "I know. But I can't lose you completely." They sat in silence, the weight of their love and their truth pressing down. Finally, Luca reached across the table, taking Ezra's hand. "We'll figure out how to be brothers," Friends. Something. It wasn't what Ezra wanted, but it was something to hold on to. They spent the rest of the night talking not about Marianne, but about their dreams, their fears, the city they both loved. It was a start, fragile but real. The weeks that followed were a slow rebuilding. They met for coffee, for walks, for late-night talks that avoided the past. Ezra wrote poetry again, this time about hope, about finding family in unexpected places. Luca painted a mural in the Miss Iona vibrant scene of two figures standing side by side, their hands linked, their faces turned toward the sky. Marianne reached out occasionally, sending letters or texts, but they kept her at a distance, not ready to let her in. Their bond, though changed, grew stronger in its new form. They were brothers. Yes, but they were also something more, two souls who'd found each other in a city of millions, who'd loved fiercely and lost painfully, but who refused to let go entirely. The seasons shifted, and San Francisco draped itself in autumn's golden light. Ezra and Luca settled into a new rhythm, one defined by careful boundaries and unspoken longing. They were no longer lovers, but their connection ran deeper than most friendships, forged in the fire of their shared truth. Ezra found solace in his writing, publishing a small chapbook of poems that caught the attention of a local literary group. The words poured out of him grief, love, the ache of what could have been. At a reading in a cozy bookstore, Luca sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride. When Ezra read a poem about two stars orbiting the same sky, never touching but always near, Luca's quiet nod said everything. Luca, too, was finding his way. His murals were gaining recognition, each one a testament to his resilience. He painted one near the Castro, a vibrant scene of intertwined hands against a backdrop of rainbows, a tribute to the community that had embraced them both. Ezra visited it one evening, tracing the lines with his fingers, feeling Luca's heart in every brushstroke. But the shadow of Marianne lingered. Her letters arrived monthly, each one a plea for connection. Ezra and Luca read them together, sometimes laughing at her awkward attempts at humor, sometimes crying at her raw honesty. She was trying. They could see that. But trust was a bridge they weren't ready to cross. One day, Luca suggested they meet her again, this time on their terms. Not because she deserves it, he said, but because we do. We need closure. Ezra agreed, though his stomach churned. They chose a neutral spota bench overlooking Ocean Beach, where the waves roared and the horizon stretched endless. Marianne arrived, looking nervous but hopeful, a scarf wrapped tightly around her shoulders. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, her voice steady. But I want you to know I'm here, if you ever want me to be. Ezra studied her, seeing the woman who'd shaped them, for better or worse. We're building something, he said. Not with you. Not yet. But we're trying. Luca nodded. We found each other. That's enough for now. Marianne's eyes glistened, but she didn't push. She handed them a small box, filled with photos and trinkets from their early years. Ezra's first drawing, Luca's baby blanket. Keep them, she said. They're yours. They left the beach with the box, their hearts heavy but lighter than before. Back at Luca's apartment, they spread the contents on the floor, piecing together fragments of a past they'd never known. A photo of Ezra as a baby, held by a smiling Marianne, made Luca pause. "You look like her," he said softly. "So do you," Ezra replied. And for the first time, the resemblance didn't hurt. Their new normal wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. They spent Thanksgiving together, cooking a chaotic meal in Ezra's tiny kitchen, laughing until their sides ached. They invited friends from the art and poetry scenes, creating a chosen family that filled the gaps their past had left. One night, as they sat on Luca's balcony, watching the city lights, Ezra said, "I used to think love was about finding the one person who'd complete me. But maybe it's about finding someone who helps you complete yourself." Luca smiled, his eyes soft. "You're still a poet. And you're still my muse," Ezra said, the words heavy with truth. They didn't kiss, didn't cross the line they'd drawn, but their hands brushed, and it was enough. They were brothers, friends, two halves of a story that was still being written. Winter settled over San Francisco, wrapping the city in fog and quiet. Ezra and Luca's bond grew steadier, a delicate balance of brotherhood and something unspoken, something only they understood. They leaned on each other, their shared history a tether that kept them grounded. Ezra's poetry career blossomed. A local magazine published his work, and he began hosting open mic nights at a bar in the Haight. Luca was always there, sketching in the corner, his presence a quiet anchor. One night, after a particularly raw reading, a stranger approached Ezra, offering to connect him with a publisher. "Your words," she said, "they feel like truth." Luca's art, too, was taking flight. A gallery in Soma offered him a solo show, a chance to tell his story through paint and canvas. He spent weeks preparing, his apartment a chaos of color and emotion. Ezra helped hang the pieces, each one a window into Luca's heart grief. Love, resilience splashed across the walls. The night of the show was electric. The gallery buzzed with people, their voices mingling with soft jazz. Luca's paintings told a story of loss and hope, of two souls finding each other against all odds. The centerpiece was a massive canvas of two figures standing back to back, their silhouettes blending into a starry sky. Ezra stood before it, his throat tight, knowing it was their story. "You okay?" Luca asked, appearing beside him. Ezra nodded, unable to speak. "It's us, isn't it?" Luca's smile was soft. "Sad. Always will be." The show was a success, and Luca's name began to ripple through the art world. But success didn't erase the ache of their past. Marianne's letters kept coming, each one a reminder of the woman who'd shaped their lives, for better or worse. One evening, Ezra found Luca staring at a new letter, his face unreadable. "She wants to meet again," Luca said. "She's got a job now, a place of her own. Says she's trying to make things right." Ezra sat beside him, their shoulders touching. "Do you want to see her?" Luca sighed. "Part of me does. Part of me wants to forget she exists." Ezra understood. He felt the same pull, the same resistance. "Let's decide together," he said. They chose a small cafe in No Valley, a neutral space where the past couldn't overwhelm them. Marianne arrived, looking healthier, her eyes bright with cautious hope. She spoke of her new life working at a community center, helping others like her rebuild. I'm not asking for a place in your lives, she said. I just want you to know I'm trying. Ezra watched her, searching for the woman who'd abandoned them. He saw instead someone broken, remaking herself one day at a time. Luca was quieter, his questions sharp but not cruel. Why didn't you ever look for us? He asked. Marianne's voice trembled. I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid I'd ruin you all over again. They didn't forgive her. Not fully. But they listened. And when they left, Ezra felt a weight lift. A small piece of the puzzle settling into place. Back in the city's rhythm, Ezra and Luca found new ways to heal. They volunteered at a youth center, mentoring kids who'd grown up like Luca, in foster care, or like Ezra, with questions no one could answer. They shared their story, not the romance, but the journey of finding family, of choosing love in its many forms. One night, as they walked through the Castro, the streets alive with pride flags and laughter, Luca stopped. I'm glad it was you, he said, his voice steady. Even with everything, I'm glad we found each other. Ezra's heart swelled. Me too. They stood there, two brothers bound by more than blood, their future unwritten but full of possibility. Spring brought renewal to San Francisco, and with it, a tentative peace for Ezra and Luca. They'd carved out a space where their past didn't define them, where their love, now platonic but no less deep, could thrive. They were brothers. Yes, but also chosen family. Their bond a testament to resilience. Ezra's poetry book was published, a slim volume titled Orbiting Stars. It was dedicated to Luca, though his name appeared only as the one who showed me the sky. At the launch party, held in a bookstore overlooking the bay, Luca gave Ezra a painting, a small, private piece of two hands reaching across a starry night, a quiet nod to their shared journey. Luca's art career soared. His murals dotted the city, each one a story of survival and hope. He began teaching art to kids in foster care, pouring his heart into giving them what he'd never had, a sense of belonging. Ezra often joined him, reading poetry to the kids, watching their faces light up with stories. Marianne remained on the edges of their lives. They met her occasionally, always on their terms, always with boundaries. She respected their space, sharing updates about her Lithia promotion at the community center, a new apartment, a fragile sobriety she fought to maintain. Ezra and Luca didn't call her mom, but they listened. And sometimes, they laughed together. One afternoon, Marianne invited them to her new place, a small but cozy apartment in the outer Sunset. They hesitated but went, curious about the woman she was becoming. The apartment was filled with light, with photos of her new Lithia pottery class, a group of friends, a garden she tended. I kept these for you, she said, handing them a box of letters she'd written over the years. Never sent. They're not excuses. Just my truth. Ezra and Luca read them later, sprawled on Luca's couch, the words raw and heavy. Marianne had written to them as babies, as boys, as young men, pouring out her love, her guilt, her hope that they'd find happiness. I didn't know how to be yours, one letter read, but I never stopped loving you. Luca wiped his eyes, his voice soft. She's trying. Really trying. Ezra nodded, his own eyes stinging. Maybe that's enough for now. Their lives moved forward, intertwined yet separate. Ezra dated again, cautiously, his heart still tender but open to possibility. Luca threw himself into his art, his paintings brighter now, full of hope. They supported each other, celebrating wins, holding space for pain, their bond unshakable. One evening, at a pride event in the Castro, they stood together, watching the parade of colors and joy. Luca leaned close, his voice barely audible over the music. "We're okay, aren't we?" Ezra smiled, his heart full. "Yeah, we're more than okay." They raised their hands, cheering with the crowd. Two brothers who'd found each other in a world that tried to break them. Their love a light that refused to dim. Summer painted San Francisco in vibrant hues, and Ezra and Luca stood stronger than ever. Their story, once a tangle of pain and love, had woven itself into something beautiful, a tapestry of resilience, forgiveness, and chosen family. They'd learned to carry their past without letting it define them, to love each other as brothers and friends, to build a life that honored their truth. Ezra's poetry became a beacon for others. He spoke at community events, sharing their story, not the romance, but the journey of finding connection in a fractured world. His words resonated, drawing letters from strangers who'd faced their own impossible choices, who found hope in his survival. Luca's art transformed the city. His murals were everywhere, in school walls, community centers, even a hospital, each one a celebration of human connection. He painted one final piece for Ezra, a gift for his 25th birthday, two figures walking side by side, their shadows blending into one, set against a sunrise. "For us," Lucas said, his eyes bright. "For always." Marianne became a quiet presence in their lives. They invited her to small moments of coffee here, a walk there, testing the waters of trust. She didn't push, didn't demand, but her efforts were steady, her love a constant undercurrent. One day, she showed them a photo album she'd made, filled with pictures of their childhoods, pieced together from what she'd kept or found. "I want you to have this," she said. "Your story deserves to be whole." Ezra and Luca took the album, their fingers brushing as they turned the pages. There they were, two boys, worlds apart, now side by side. The photos didn't erase the pain, but they offered something new, a sense of roots, however tangled. On a warm July evening, they stood on the cliffs of Land's End, the Pacific stretching before them. The city hummed behind, alive with possibility. Ezra looked at Luca, his brother, his friend, his everything, and felt a peace he'd never known. "We made it," Ezra said, the wind carrying his words. Luca smiled, his curls catching the sunlight. "Yeah, we did." They didn't need to say more. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was there's a tale of love that defied boundaries, of pain that led to healing, of two souls who found each other and refused to let go. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and pink, Ezra and Luca stood together, ready for whatever came next, their bond a light that would never fade.